Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Folks, he brought notes with him. I never see Thomas with notes.
Well, Betsy, you heard me start this list so many times, and then I go off on one aspect of it because I get all worked up because just, one aspect of it shows the crimes of Comey and the conspiracy and the group of people who we have been naming these people now for a long, long time. Because their paths of crime, they didn't even care. They littered everywhere. So we've written a number of articles, the Commission of Comey Crimes, and then the way that Mueller, articles on Mueller, and the way that those two were criminals long before what we now see in the news, which is simply the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, and just one little thing, Thomas. I know
Yes.
you're so excited and your pile of notes is just so big, but if you speak so fast you can't enunciate the words, then you're moving too quickly. Can you just slow it down just a bit?
Yes, but Betsy, I only have one page.
Okay, I'm just saying.
And it's what I wrote down in 10 minutes before we did this.
And
just so that for once I'll actually be able to say, okay, did I cover this,
okay,
this?
I'm just saying, just keep a nice steady pace, please.
Okay. And just so I don't dispel the myth, I used no references when I wrote down everything on this list. Okay, so what we're going to try to do, we're going to have a little bit of fun today. Because it's so depressing. Because when you look out there, you go, okay, like the person who asked this morning, can you explain all these different releases? Why are there so many releases and I'm so confused?
That would be my girlfriend, Judy. Hey, Judy.
Hey, Judy, we love you. So the deal is, it's so complicated, and that's the reason why I often go off into the weeds, because when you start to break down the details. So here's the thing. I'm going on a show later. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Kate Daly's show for the second time. And she wants to talk about...
It's a radio show. NBC
show.
affiliate?
Fox, yeah.
Oh, Fox.
Fox
okay.
AM, across the nation.
You can just Google her name, and then it's going to be 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Plus, they're recorded. You can go to her site. The first one had trouble broadcasting, but this one, I'm going to share this stuff with her, too.
Okay.
Because they want to know what the deal is with Carter Page and Comey. Who wouldn't be frustrated? That's the reason I get so frustrated. So I'm going to try to list the criminals. Okay? Here we go. The first thing that happened is I always start in December of 2015 with the DNC breach. Okay, that's where it all started, because we got to see the WikiLeaks. We got to see what their game plan was, and we got to see what I call the Russian cover story. Okay? So, when we talk about this, I'm going to first list all these criminals, and then I'm going to list 18 crimes that this conspiracy committed, okay? So if we want to talk about who the first and biggest criminal is that was Comey's spy, that would be, of course, Carter Page. Carter Page in 2012 was made an FBI asset, and then he was working for years to go after the Russians, and he was called an undercover employee. He was paid by the FBI. And so you'll see in the list, because I put it in chronological order, that was one of the first things Comey needed to do. He got someone he already had been using against the Russians, who had successfully, by 2016, helped prosecute them, and then revealed that who the person was, which was Carter Page. Well, now Carter Page is in complete dilemma. What is he going to do? His whole life was trying to do international policy. He was on the Council of Foreign Relations. He was a complete nobody, but he was trying. And so when his boss, Comey, came to him after he'd been working on going after the Russians successfully and actually prosecuted one, in a very lame case, by the way. The other two Russians weren't prosecuted because one was an attaché from the United Nations, and they have political immunity, and another one was another Russian politician who has political immunity. But they went for the low-hanging fruit so that they could, they love to ensnare people like a Carter Page, make them feel important by being an undercover agent, and then later use them. I believe Carter Page was used. He did not know that the dossier would ever be released. The whole plan was to never release the dossier. Just have Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson and Bruce Orr talk about the content. They never wanted BuzzFeed to release it. That's why Carter Page is so upset. Now, Carter Page is suing, of course, Yahoo News because of the Christopher Steele article they used as the verification for the proof the dossier was true, and that Carter Page was going to get $11 billion through Gazprom, through making a deal with Trump, who he never talked to, who he never attended a single meeting of the group of 5 people's names who were first given as the foreign advisors for Trump early on in the campaign. So Comey came to him and says, get in there and do what you can and be a nutcase like you are. And in the end, we're going to have you completely say crazy, crazy things and connect you to Trump. Because why? We're not going to tell you the whole thing because it wasn't written at that point. But the plan was that you're going to prove that Trump was receiving money that you helped connect with his lawyer, Michael Cohen, and with Paul Manafort. And you guys connected Trump, and he's been paid for 5 years from 3 Russian oligarchs who, in fact, are suing Christopher Steele. And Carter Page was supposed to be the person making all those contacts. He never knew that. He was simply put on this case, as usual, reverse. He's a double spy.
He's a wackadoodle.
And they called him a wackadoodle. People who worked with him, the Russians who worked with him called him an idiot. And they laughed that they said, we tried to convince him he was going to get, 11% or 16% of Gazprom's yearly income, which Carter Page figured out would be about $11 billion a year. For doing what? Carter Page, he worked in Russia for 3 years as basically not only a professor and an investor in Merrill Lynch, but he tried to break into all of this stuff. He worked in the government here in Washington for a while in a minor position. So who is Carter Page? He is a Comey spy. And you say, wait, what? The whole dossier was created because Comey came up with the dossier's idea and the content of what was going to be in the dossier. And I can prove that because we know when Comey met with the DNC, we know when they created their plan because we saw it put into place, and everyone left such big trails because they never, ever imagined Hillary wouldn't get elected. This was an insurance plan. It was never going to come out. So now that it's come out and the names were named out in writing and the people saw their names, almost everyone in the dossier is suing and will win against Christopher Steele because it's slanderous, just exactly as James Comey said it was. And remember, James Comey went to the president 3 times and said, you are not under investigation. He was under a counterintelligence operation, which attempted to...
And you mean James Comey didn't think that he should tell Trump that?
No. He told him he gave him a 1-page executive summary of the 33-page salacious document and said, don't even look at it. It's salacious, it's unverified. After spending all of his time from December of 2015 all the way through the election and after using that dossier to get not only the surveillance, but to pinpoint Carter Page as a spy. So he had the broadest surveillance anyone can possibly have. Carter Page never even worked in the campaign. This is how they surveilled the campaign.
So this was the Trojan horse to get him into the campaign and then use him as the spying vehicle.
Correct. But he was going to simply be himself, which was a crazy wild man. And so basically all they did was, feed his ego, and he did his thing. And he never had any real contacts with anybody. They once caught him, a couple times they caught him for 10 seconds speaking to Russian officials at 3 different times. One of them is what caught him in 2012 in their little entrapment thing, where they then used him to go after this Russian fake banker, and that's the guy who got prosecuted. Okay, well, that's silly. Though that's the beginning. But it explains to you why Carter Page is now mad and suing not only Yahoo News because they slandered him and now he can never work anywhere because he's an idiot on both sides of the camp, Russian and American, but he's also suing, believe it or not, and we heard this with our own ears when Laura Ingraham asked him and then she repeated it, he's suing the U.S. Department of Defense Board of Broadcasting Governors. A group that I speak about all the time, if you are regular listeners. That's who he's suing because why? That's where the propaganda is created. That would be the propaganda machine that who allowed Comey and his conspiracy gang, and we'll list all of them in a minute, but his conspiracy gang to work in a number of different directions. And what they were trying to do is, of course, rig the election, make sure Trump got knocked out, Hillary got elected, because that's what Putin wanted. And remember, it's the opposite of everything you heard. Hillary's in bed with Putin. Comey's in bed with Putin. Mueller's in bed with Putin. Mueller delivered yellow cake uranium to Putin before he even bought into Uranium One, the illegal, stupid company, fake company that Bill Clinton and Frank Giustra created, which caused the whole Uranium One mess, which no one's even investigated the bigger end of it and the larger amounts of money that are given and are still being given to this very day over the fact that Bill Clinton created the Uranium One deal. It was a fake deal. Well, Hillary knew all of that, and Mueller was there to cover for that. And so Mueller is covering for Comey, and Comey covers for Mueller. Those two have been doing this since the early 90s. They are like twins. And Rod Rosenstein was always at the third man out, but he was standing right there with them the entire time. Andrew McCabe came later, and he's a sloppy mess, and so that's the reason he's gone. So when we're going to start naming these spies of Comey, we first have to set up the scene of the conspiracy, okay? And then I'll go through it as fast as I can because you've heard so many of these details before, but not in this order.
Set the scene. Let's go.
Okay.
Giddy up.
All right. The DNC criminals who were involved in this were, of course, Cody Shearer, who wrote the other dossier, which we now know was given by the FBI and the DOJ through Bruce Orr to Christopher Steele to add to his salacious document, which, of course, from the beginning came from a good idea of Alexandra Chalupa, who immediately went from the Democratic National Committee, got her friend, the spy, the Russian spy, who was already a Comey and Mueller agent for years, Dmitry Alperovich, who was the head of CrowdStrike, the only person allowed to look at the DNC server. Okay, he came in immediately, he planted all that stuff, we know that. So Cody Shearer was, of course, a friend of Sidney Blumenthal. Now, let's not forget, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was completely complicit in this. She knew of the dossier. This was the October surprise, folks. We'll prove it in a minute, because when you get the timeline, that's when you get the evidence in order that you can catch the criminals. Did Donna Brazil know? Of course she knew. Did John Weiner know? Yes. Did everyone in the Grassley letter that said, we want to know everyone in the DNC, and they made a list of them and the State Department, that's going to be the next thing that's going to be released. All those people's names and the way they worked with the DNC and the State Department's involvement with the FBI and Glenn Simpson and Fusion GPS. So, starting right from there. Now, I want to put someone in there that you might not think belongs there, and that is John McCain. John McCain couldn't stand the fact that Comey was blowing it and hadn't released this salacious dossier. So he heard from what was his name, Ambassador Wood, that it existed and he could get a copy. So he sent someone to Christopher Steele who wouldn't give it to him. And then finally, with Fusion GPS's approval, he got it. And I say, personal opinion, that he was the person who released it to BuzzFeed, so they had a copy. Because Comey, Glenn Simpson, and Christopher Steele knew that if a copy of this ever got out, it could do what is happening right now. Because anyone who read the dossier would know that it was fake. Okay, so from the beginning, those are the people. So that includes John Podesta, worked directly with Comey. We know that. We know Hillary Clinton worked directly with Comey on this issue because they had to cover up their weakest point, which all their surveys said, which we see in WikiLeaks, where John Podesta says we have to create a Russian cover story and push it back on Trump. We have to make Trump the Russian person in bed with Putin. He is the Russian spy. We got to make it that he's being paid, already paid. And so when this stuff comes out slowly and it's unverified, it just makes such a bad picture that not only, unfortunately for them, during the election they did that, but then they did it when he became president-elect, which makes it horribly illegal, seditious, and treasonous. But then when he became sitting president after the inaugural, once he was inaugurated, holy Lord, this is foreign agents using espionage and a complete conspiracy inside of the DOJ, the CIA, NSA too, sorry, Admiral Rogers, the FBI, the counterintelligence, all of them. Everyone named in the Russian intelligence investigation that they released, the joint investigation in December. I forgot to put that on the list. Everyone involved in that is part of the conspiracy. And don't forget everyone who communicated with Hillary Clinton on an unsecure line the entire time that she was Secretary of State. That is a federal crime. In fact, that's espionage, whether they know it or not. And they do not have to have intent for espionage. So that's where it got started, right? Now, let's go to who sits on that committee, Alexandra Chalupa. She said...
Wait a minute, which committee?
The Democratic National Committee.
Okay.
With Podesta and Hillary.
Okay.
Sitting there, they said, this is our weakness. What are we going to do? Alexandra said, no problem. I'll go back to Ukraine and we will nail Manafort. And by the way, Comey's sitting there too. And Comey says, we can sweep in Manafort. I got the perfect Russian spy. We're going to make him a double agent. His name is Carter Page. I got another spy. His name is Felix Sater. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But what we need is some good salacious material that shows a Russian connection. Who can tell us, who can connect us with something that can show that Trump is being paid? Alexandra Chalupa raised her hand and said, oh, I can do that, Jimmy boy. I am a Russian. I'm a Ukrainian. I'm a Russian. And I have incredible connections to the neo-Nazis in Ukraine who are actually on the inside Russians. They're all Russians. Let's remember, every Ukrainian is a Russian, okay? What are we talking about? Anyone who deals with Ukraine is dealing with Russians. So she said, I'm going to get my buddy, Dmitry Alperovitch, because we also know that in that meeting they discussed the breach, not the hack. And they knew who the breach was. And later John Podesta said they should make an example of him. And we'll mention that that was, of course, Alpha Jalal, the person who is alleged to have assassinated Seth Rich the night before he was coming to the FBI to turn over the information that he had passed through to Julian Assange.
Oh, wait a minute. And what he didn't know is by giving it to the FBI, it would have gone nowhere.
Correct. It would have gone to James Comey, who had already ordered his assassination.
He would have probably put everything in that secret closet that his brother built for him at the FBI to hold all of his blackmail materials.
The first crime of James Comey was before he even got to D.C. and became the head of the FBI. His brother got basically a no-bid contract to build the new FBI headquarters. He never built a building in his life before, Peter Comey. And then he got a contract to reorganize the entire FBI, though he had never organized any organization. That was before Comey even got there. So Alpha Jalal is the person who was released, the MS-13 gang member who was released from prison by Andrew McCabe himself 3 days before Seth Rich's murder. And they have the film of the 3 MS-13 gang members, and it's pretty easy to realize that one of them was this guy that they just released. So we have to name him. That was a Comey spy because Andrew McCabe was working, of course, directly for him, for Comey. So
Andrew McCabe conspired to commit murder?
Andrew McCabe released Alpha Jalal for no reason whatsoever 3 days before the death of Seth Rich. And it is known by those who have seen the film that it was MS-13 members who killed Seth Rich. It is also known that the FBI came in, strangely enough, and seized Seth Rich's laptop, which is probably in the secret room that James Comey's brother, Peter Comey, built for him, which also had...
Which Trump would have gotten when they fired James Comey and he was away, not at his office. They would have gone in and seized all this stuff.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz's computer would be in there. Imran Awan's computer would be in there.
Blackberries.
All the Blackberries from the Hillary email scandal and the computers would all be in there.
Okay.
So remember, we know who paid Fusion GPS, and this was from December. And I'm just going to say it. Thomas Paine in The Ass of the Globalists personally said that it was not either one of the two Republican idiots who came forward that said, or the newspapers that they said then paid for the initial opposition research against Trump as Republicans. That's a lie. Devin Nunes came out and said that's a lie. We'll soon find that out. I said that was a lie because they started from December, because we know that Carter Page was enlisted in March. We know that the plan had to be put in place for Dmitry Alperovitch to come immediately and look at this breach in December. Dmitry Alperovitch is a spy. He's a Russian spy. Alexandra Chalupa, if you can't call her a Russian spy, then you just don't know anything about Russian spies. Okay, so let's look at what happened next. Felix Sater was enlisted, and he did a bunch of stuff I'm going to say in a minute. He was already arrested for stabbing somebody in a brawl in a bar. So he came under FBI control. He's been an asset for them. He's been going after Trump for a long time, and he was used during the election again and again and again. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then Comey went after Franklin Foer, who works for Slate, which is a newspaper online basically, and paid him to look like he was the front man for discovering there was a computer connected to Russians receiving daily money to Trump. The proof! Franklin Forer started back in the spring of 2016 early and then tried to release this in October 31st, and Comey blew him out of the water in Franklin Forer released it October 30th, 2016. Comey, on the next day, came out and said, no, that ain't right. He didn't want anybody looking at that because it was all fake and it was done by the FBI. He didn't want anyone looking anymore because he had just gotten, after trying already, the complete Title I FISA permission for using the dossier, the salacious dossier, so that he could then not try to stop Trump during the election. They released all the dossier information before, and remember, from July on, Hillary Clinton, another Comey spy in this conspiracy, from the beginning, but even more so, because she started writing texts saying Trump is connected to the Russians. As soon as it started to leak out that the Yahoo News, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, and Mother Jones, all Comey spies who were paid through Fusion GPS, mark my words, we already know that they state that 3 news agencies were paid. They were paid spies passing out salacious material which they believed came from Russians and was going to take down the election. Oh, then the president-elect. Oh, then, remember, this was to take down a sitting president. Comey didn't need the dossier in October if the election was going to end in a few days, now did he? I and the conclave are the only ones saying this. The dossier was not for the election. It was for the George Soros regime change. It was for the treasonous, seditious act of removing a duly elected president. They tried, remember, what did they call it? First, they called it, it was Comey spies trying to get into the camp and get set up for the dossier, and then the counterintelligence investigation that started at the same time in July on George Papadopoulos, where they did not even take George Papadopoulos in for questioning until a year later. Completely entrapment. As a matter of fact, Joseph Mifsud, who lived in London, the professor who then met again George Papadopoulos in Italy in March of 14th, 2016, he worked for the Valdi discussion group, and he connected George Papadopoulos with promises, though he didn't, not only to a woman who claimed to be Putin's niece, who Papadopoulos is too embarrassed to say he had an affair with, but he did, but also to the Valdi discussion group. You can't be any more of a Russian spy than to meet with the Valdi discussion group that each year meets with Vladimir Putin himself. So could you get a bigger spy than Joseph Mifsud, the man who was used for the FBI entrapment of George Papadopoulos? I get really upset about this because I don't believe that any law enforcement agency should be able to break the law to entrap someone to break the law. That's insanity. That is Comey's conspiracy. That was a frame-up that started in July of 2016, though they didn't even question him until a year later. But that was used for another FISA court warrant investigation, warrant that was on George Papadopoulos. No one wants to mention that one. So you got the domestic one on Carter Page. You got the international one on George Papadopoulos, not part of the dossier. And then as part of the dossier, you have the leaked information that Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, was in Prague doing the deal with the Russians. We now find out, look at his passport. He never went there. They showed it the next day that this came out in the fake news. They showed, no, Michael Cohen never went to Prague. He cannot be the person getting money and coordinating this whole thing. So what is not known is that at that time, there was a very, very strange case going on that almost no one wants to talk about. There was a hacker who hacked Dropbox and LinkedIn. His name is Yevgeny Nikulin. I'm about the only person who seems to have ever noticed that the FBI went to Prague twice and offered him full immunity because he's Russian.
Now, when you say the FBI went there, was there some agent that you know that was there?
They have their signed-in signatures in the book in the prison in Czechoslovakia that were released.
They do.
Yes. I never speak anything that isn't true.
Yes, that is true. Well, sometimes, we know that people are listening to us.
Unless I'm speculating, and then I'll tell you, I'm speculating.
Actually are doing their own research to carry these stories forward.
Now, let me speculate then. Okay, you got me going.
Just in case
Let me speculate. Why couldn't they arrest this man until he was in Prague, and then with the FBI's help, bang! He's arrested, he's imprisoned. They go there twice and say, we'll give you full immunity. You can come to America. We'll give you endless credit cards. Change your name. All you got to do is say, since you're Russian, that you hacked the DNC for the sake of going against Hillary Clinton and supporting Donald Trump. After they went there twice, he then spilled this completely to the press in Czechoslovakia, or not Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, excuse me. It's now separated. Slovenia is separated from the Czech Republic. So let's be very clear about this. This was the FBI trying to enlist good old Yevgeny to be the Russian hacker of the DNC. Who else did they go after for that? Well, of course, they said...
So you're saying they were trying to cover their butts at this point?
It's all part of the conspiracy.
Okay.
They knew it wasn't going to be in the dossier, but in the dossier, in the end, they make the huge mistake of naming the hacker of the Russian hacker of the DNC because they had so much pressure, because the mainstream media had said this so many times over and over again, and it got close because we revealed... It was Dmitry Alperovitch who left the Russian footprints in the DNC's server. That's a fact. He used the same old versions when he attacked Ukraine and got caught there. And I can go into infinite detail about why we know who left those footprints.
And I can hear people saying, please, Betsy, stop him now.
Thank you. Stop him, please. Then they went after Kim.com. Remember when Kim.com, who's under... not investigation, they've indicted him and they want him back in America and he's in New Zealand. All of a sudden he speaks up and says, no. I helped Seth Rich download his two breaches to Julian Assange's WikiLeaks. But if you let me come to America, I will testify as such. And then he started making other crazy deals. They went to meet him personally, the FBI did, to do a deal with him so they could get him to say what they wanted Yevgeny to say. No, he wouldn't go for it. So you don't hear about him anymore. Then they went and they talked to good old Marcel Lazar-Lahil. Guccifer 1. Guccifer. Remember Guccifer 2.0? That's Comey. Remember that Guccifer 2.0 supposedly, and tried to say he's a Russian, even though the first Guccifer is a Romanian. They tried to say that he's a Russian. Guccifer 2.0. What did Guccifer 2.0 do? He went in and said he hacked, but he didn't give you much. Go read what he gave you. Then he said he went into the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Committee Caucus, whatever the name of it is, DCCC, and hacked them all to pieces. Then he created the DC Leaks. Who is this that had all that access? We can tell you how he got that access. That was through Imran Awan. That was because Comey became aware of the espionage ring in the House, in the Congress, who also had direct access to Debbie Wasserman Schultz's material completely with the DNC and had complete access to the DNC. And when his 4 fake other IT people were fired, who are paid more than congressmen and senators, and took home millions of dollars, and they didn't do their work, and they shuffled everything through an off-site server, which, as far as we know, is still working to this very day. He left the country once, came back. All of them left the country. He came back. He tried to...
We're talking about Imran.
Imran Awan tried to do a scam with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and a real estate deal, get another $300,000 before he left, because the $4 million that he and his scammer IT group got wasn't enough, and his fake car companies and his fake real estate companies. And this is one of the hugest cases that is being ignored by Comey. This is a Comey crime, and that's one of his big spies. It's a Pakistani nationals. They had access to all this. So Guccifer 2.0 had access to that, and that's why I know, personally, I'll say this is my opinion, I know Comey, of course, knew this was going on. and he used it to his advantage. It was another Comey spy. So then he was able to release this stuff, making it look like Guccifer II, a Russian, did hack the DNC, and then tried to get Roger Stone, because Roger Stone talked with him a couple times in a text message saying Roger Stone's a Russian. Everyone became a Russian after that, you see. Everyone except the real Russians like Dmitry Alperovitch and his father, Michael Alperovitch, the cryptologist. Oh, no, they're not Russian, and they're not Russian spies. Oh, Felix Sater? Oh, sorry, he's Russian. Oh, on and on and on. Yevgeny. Oh, he's Russian. Anybody who's Russian, they tried to solicit to be a spy. Let's talk about how many Russians were in that meeting at Trump Tower with the Trump team that was being spied on through Paul Manafort. Remember, Paul Manafort was under 5 separate investigations. The CIA was spying on him, and 5 separate investigations. The FBI, counterintelligence, DOJ, on and on and on, New York Attorney General, blah, 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 everything. Everyone was going after Manafort. That's why he's in the dossier. He's easy to go after. Was he working with Russians? Sure. He worked with Ukrainians. And they call Ukrainians Russian when they want to, but they call them Ukrainians, like Alexander Chalupa, a non-Russian when they want to do that. Who was in that meeting? Natalia Veselnitskaya. Are you kidding me? You can't get, I'm sorry, I'm going to lose my voice here. You can't get a bigger Russian spy than her. The State Department allowed her to come in just for that meeting and for some stupid hearing, which was a complete mockery. And they set it up. Who set it up?
Well, then
Felix.
Did John Kerry give his approval for this?
Of course.
Okay, so he's...
I forgot to mention John Kerry.
Well, I just want to make sure that
but we're not to the State Department yet.
Okay, but we're not at Hillary's State Department either. It's Kerry's State Department at this point.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So, Rob Goldstein is an active FBI asset.
I've never heard of his name.
He is the guy who... he's a disgusting person. He's a friend of Felix Sater's. Felix Sater set this up behind the scenes, trying to use Rob Goldstein. Rob Goldstein botched the whole thing and even let his emails. The FBI got his emails. Why did they get Rob Goldstein's emails? But what did Jared do, or Trump Jr., one or the other? They released their emails immediately to try to get ahead of the narrative, which showed there was no... What they tried to say was they were going to give dirt on Hillary. They didn't say what. They insinuated the 33,000 missing emails. Well, you know what? If someone asks you, patriot out there, any patriot, any American patriot, if they tell you they can give you Hillary's 33,000 missing emails, it is your duty to say thank you. I'll go to the meeting where I'll get those and I'll turn them into the FBI. That is your duty. It has nothing to do with opposition research. They came and talked about basically adopting children, the Magnitsky Act, which is Bill Browder. And Bill Browder couldn't be any more of a Comey asset either. He's a Comey asset working in Russia. Oh my gosh, don't get me started on Bill Browder. So, Rinat Akhmetshin, everybody knows he is a double agent. He is a Russian spy now in the business world being used by Comey, and it was a setup. Rob Goldstein, everyone knows, is a Comey asset, and that means a Mueller asset, okay? And then the only one that they couldn't get anything on, which is absolutely hysterical, is a friend of Trump somehow got mixed in this, who's basically the representative, who Mueller's calling into his investigation, who is the representative of Aras Agalarov. Okay, he's a businessman. Trump did business with him. Okay, so these are all, okay, yeah. But let's mention the real criminals. Let's mention the real Russian spies who are hiding uranium-1. Would you not agree, listener, that if you allowed the Russians to come in and for 10 years take over all production and blending, enrichment and downblending, movement, shipment, and selling of uranium-238 to our own nuclear power plants in America, all controlled by Putin directly. Putin directly controls Rosatom, which directly owns uranium-1, which directly owns our resources 20% right now, but also he owns Tenax, which also owns Tenam, which is where Vadim Minikin, another Russian spy, and 10 other female spies came into the country and for 10 years not only bribed and extorted, but probably did much worse than that, allowed by Mueller to run rampant in America with Hillary's and Bill's uranium one scandal. It's the most ridiculous thing in front of our eyes that's not even being looked at.
Thomas, it's the crime is so big, so heinous, most regular folks won't believe it.
No, they won't. But let me mention just some of the biggest criminals. First off, Mueller is such a criminal. Read what we have to say about him. He came out of WilmerHale with 7 criminal lawyers, and he brought his good old buddy, Aaron Zelinsky, who will do anything for him. That's his chief of staff. He's as much a criminal as Mueller. He's someday will be his replacement. Then they got the criminal
Not
lawyer.
on our watch.
No, we're busting him.
We're busting him right
putting
here.
the light on him, and these trolls turn to stone. They're trolls. They're big. They're scary. They're awful, but they do their work at night. When the sun comes, they turn to stone. Andrew Weissman, every case he wins, he loses later on appeal because he uses criminal lawyer behavior. He's the one who stormed Manafort's house to get his lawyer records, which was illegal. They took them, copied them, gave them back, and said, oops, we took these by accident. That's why they stormed his house, folks, to get privileged information between Manafort and his lawyer. By the way, his lawyer worked for WilmerHale, and that's why we know that's why they went to get it, because of course WilmerHale lawyers are crooked, and of course Paul Manafort is crooked, and if you didn't know that, you don't know your history. Paul Manafort is a president maker. Make no mistake about it. They had to take out Paul Manafort, they wanted to take out Michael Cohen, and they had to take out General Flynn, but that's a separate issue. So, Pret Bharara, he's in line, just like Michael Horowitz, to be the head of the FBI or the CIA or the DOJ. These guys are in line as criminals.
Not on Betsy's watch.
And Eric Schneiderman, expect that Eric Schneiderman, who has brought 200 lawsuits against Trump, won one of them because Trump, on the Trump University, didn't have time to fight it while being president, so he conceded on that one. The others, all fallacious, okay? Big criminals. Let's just mention the DOJ criminals. Let's go into the Comey conspiracy criminals who were called, remember, they were called the counterintelligence investigation using George Papadopoulos as a framed FBI fall guy, or using the fake, fallacious, horrible, garbage dossier using Carter Page as the person to get that warrant. So there were 2 warrants drawn, but mind you, they don't need warrants to do this. They did it because they figured if they'd get caught, they would hide under the issue of using the counterintelligence department of the FBI and the National Security Division of the DOJ and say, it's national security, Mr. President, we can't even tell you. And that is what happened. Trump asked, how many times am I being investigated? And 3 times, not only in public, but to Trump himself, Comey said, you are not being investigated. It was a counterintelligence operation. This is the kind of lawyer dissembling that you deal with these kind of evil lawyers, supposedly law enforcement agents, liars, that's all they are. They're after their own personal greed. So let's look at John Carlin, the guy who quit. He was the head of the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. Loretta Lynch got the heck out of there when she got caught in the tarmac and basically swinging it and saying, don't worry, Mr. President, I'm going to let Comey and his gang, and we can call them, at that point, they were called the Trump Operation. We'll let Comey and the Trump Operation, who has an insurance package, the dossier, do what they believe is their mission, which is to make sure Hillary gets elected. Don't you worry, Mr. President. And then the second that she got caught, who wrote her talking points? The FBI and James Comey and his conspiracy group, the Trump Operation, wrote Loretta Lynch's talking points. And this is found out because of not only what we've been released, but the FOIA. Remember, there are many releases going on right now. Let's just go over them. The Senate Judiciary Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, the House Oversight Committee, all have requests to the DOJ and the FBI saying, give us this information. You're doing criminal stuff and we want to bust you. They've been stalling for years. Some of these letters for these requests go back to 2015. Then in 2016, there was an Inspector General report that we can all read saying that the FISA court was completely corrupt. They were complete non-compliance, especially the domestic section. So you have to put FISA court judges, Contreras and others, are completely complicit in Comey's crimes. And that's the reason Jim Jordan is demanding to see what Comey presented to these courts, what lies, because we know now because of the stuff they released, mind you, whatever they released, they thought was clean and they wouldn't get in trouble from. Look at the trouble they're getting in. That's the clean stuff. There's 50,000 sex texts. We got 372, and they are ripping apart the DOJ and the FBI conspiracy and their partisanism. And so we hope, Michael Horowitz...
they're illegalities.
It's illegality.
They're criminality.
This is sedition.
Okay?
Treason.
Let's just not sugarcoat it for folks.
These are spies, and you can literally...
This is the FBI being weaponized against the people of America.
Correct. And it doesn't matter. The foreign agents are anti-Americans inside of American government. They are what I would call federalists. They are what some call the deep state, some call the shadow government. No, we call them out by name. John Carlin, he quit after it was seen that they lied so bad at the FISA court, he was getting the heck out of there. Just like James Baker, the head counsel for the FBI, and Comey got the heck out of there. The lawyers get out. And then they're going to use client privilege, what do you call it? The privilege of client attorney-client privilege. That's what they're going to use. So these lawyers get out. They can come out unscathed. Dana Boente, she has now been named and as the person who signed for one of these warrants. She has to go down. She's a spy.
Who is she?
She's
a
horrible.
Judge or a lawyer on that?
Oh, no, she took John Carlin's job in the National Security Department of the Department of Justice. Of course, Sally Yates, who came out and literally stood against Trump publicly, she's got to go. And Andrew Weissman, who texted her and said, good, stand up, resist Trump. So when Loretta Lynch
Sally Yates was already gone.
Loretta Lynch beat feet. Sally Yates took her place.
Yes.
Then she stood up against Trump and said she would enforce immigration law.
And I thought that she had to go. She was gone then.
He fired her.
Yeah, so when you say that, all right, so she's gone.
Yeah, she's gone.
Okay.
But she was part of the Comey spies.
Yes.
Comey conspiracy. Then you got Bruce Orr, who, his wife worked for Fusion GPS, stepped down from the CIA, loaned from the CIA, went for Fusion GPS, did all of her fake Russian stuff, added it to Glenn Simpson and his wife, Mary McCabe's. All of these are criminal. These are spies. They're all part of the conspiracy. And most of the people at Fusion GPS, they all got to go because they were all complicit in this. They worked hard. Glenn Simpson's wife opined how Mary Jacoby wasn't getting all the credit he should get because he wrote the salacious document himself. He should be given credit for writing it, not Christopher Steele. That was so that Christopher Steele, who was a foreign agent, wouldn't connect Fusion GPS to the crimes that were committed. Fusion GPS knew they were using foreign agents. Christopher Steele, many others, Alexander Chalupa and others, we don't know who all, but they say they had all these Russian connections, so their lies could get them in trouble. But I think it can be proven in some cases, certainly with Alexandra and others, her cousin, her sister, and others. So what's going on with Bruce Orr? Bruce Orr was the Department of Justice connection to the Comey group. But John Carlin was there too. So we don't know how deep it goes in the Department of Justice, but we're going to find out when Devin Nunes's new memo comes out because he's going to focus there. And so goodbye to them. Comey and his, we used to call them his bunk buddies. We didn't know, but we did make jokes that if there was a girl, well, she was deeply involved in it. And that would be Lisa Page, who was, of course, part of the Mueller team. So remember, a lot of these people were co-opted by Mueller, including, of course, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. They got kicked off of Mueller's team, and Bruce Orr. Okay, so the people committing these national security crimes are on the Mueller investigation. And mind you, I want to point this out. Michael Horowitz, through getting the text messages from the FBI, which he told Grassley he had 10,000 of them, discovered the improprieties with Peter Strzok and with Lisa Page. And that then Mueller acted to kick them off his team and at the same time kicked Bruce Orr off because he knew he was compromised, because he knew he was in those emails, because they had the emails, 50,000 of them. Well, let's remember that a big criminal over there right now is Stephen Boyd, who, with Rod Rosenstein, I forgot to mention him in the Department of Justice, huge criminal, biggest criminal over there right now. And maybe, who knows, if Jeff Sessions doesn't pull his head out of the ground and start waking up.
Flat out working for the other team.
He may be working for the other team. He's going to be pulled in. He'll be part of the conspiracy if he does not bust all of them.
At some point, he's going to have to make choices.
So Rod Rosenstein and his subordinate, Stephen Boyd. Boyd is the one who said, we're going to give you those text messages, but we're only going to give you 372 of them, and we're going to remove all attachments. We're going to remove all names of people, redact that we don't want, and we're going to make sure all SES members, go ahead, say it.
Senior Executive Services, Obama's Army.
will be redacted, so no one will see their names. Why would they go to the trouble to make sure no one knows the names of SES members? We gave their names out, didn't we, Betsy?
Oh, yeah. We have them all listed there by department, their names. And these folks are there to thwart the will of the people. They are a bureaucratic army set up to, go against everything that we want and all the changes we want.
Andrew McCabe was supposed to replace Comey. He's under how many investigations? And he has stepped down hoping to get his retirement when he's such a big criminal. Okay, so he is beyond. He is beyond a criminal. He was going to be the new Comey, Mueller, DC fixer. Okay? Then you got Bill Priesthap, who nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to investigate, but Grassley's going to investigate him. He's the head of the Counterintelligence Department, which I named from the beginning, myself and the conclave named. The Counterintelligence Department of FBI will be the ones conducting what is a counterintelligence investigation against Trump, which is still going on. We named that before it even became public. We knew that was happening. So, James Rebecki, he already got the heck out. Nellie, he was chief of staff, I believe, for Comey. And then Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr's wife, oh my heavens, she went to go... She took the CIA's program, Open Source Works, over to GPS, got a ham license. She speaks Russian. She collected the garbage on these names of people that she went after, did a terrible job. Mix that with what Glenn Simpson got. Mix that with what Bruce Orr brought from the FBI's previous investigation set up by Comey. Mix that with Cody Shearer's garbage. Threw it all in and again mentioned people who ended up suing because this garbage dossier was the work of all these people. It's the biggest conspiracy I've ever heard of in American history. But do not forget Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General for New York. He is completely evil also. So those are some of the people. Now I'm going to try to go over this very quickly, okay? I've started on this a million times and never finished it.
Not too quickly. Let's let people digest it.
Okay, I'll try to.
All right, I tell you what.
I'm going to write this up someday. How many times have I said I was going to write this up?
I know sometimes things happen so quickly.
Well, there's too many details, Betsy. If this was written up, it would be a 50 to 100 page document.
The American intelligence media has been at it for 2 years writing citizen intelligence reports that are a mountain, a huge mountain of evidence. Where are the people looking at what we have provided?
Get your pen and pencil out. You'll be the first people to hear this, except today on Fox News, I'm going to reveal this list.
Okay.
Here's how it goes. Comey goes and meets with the DNC, and they plan the Russian cover story. Number 2, Alexandra Chalupa comes up with the $27 million ledger that tries to frame Paul Manafort. She also gets the Russian communications for the dossier, which, as we keep saying, was supposed to be secret. Number 3, Comey suggests in a meeting at the White House in front of Obama, which shows that he's also a spy. So the entire Obama administration in the White House, practically. So don't forget Valerie Jarrett. Don't forget Susan Rice. Don't forget Obama. Don't forget Joe Biden. Don't forget all of them. They all knew of this. They sat in a meeting, and there's pictures of this meeting with Hillary there, where Comey says he'll write an op-ed for the New York Times bashing Trump, saying he is connected to the Russians. They tell him that's a bad idea. Number 4, this shows you how stupid Comey is. Number 4, the FBI investigation into Trump starts. People don't know this. It was put out on their site. Now it's not there. The FBI did a full investigation of Trump and his father early on in 2016 and exonerated him. Said there was absolutely no connections. So he did that. That upset them. That's when they had to create the story for a dossier that they would never release. So it was developed. So Comey went right out and got his good old friend Carter Page, the undercover employee who had already worked, and worked against the Russians. This is all it's all big news now. And he's the one who was supposed to be the connection to Putin. He was going to get $11 billion. And it was never supposed to be released. But when BuzzFeed said Carter Page is the spy, what could Carter Page do but sue him? Anyway. Now, then they had to come up with, you see how I am, Betsy? I added 4 more points that aren't even on this list. Okay, so I have to change it. That's how crazy it is. Okay, so number 6 is the DNC hack story. Ha! That was the Russian spy, Dmitry Alperovich. That was in December he went there. And then fakely, with fake news, they come up with this story that, the FBI goes and tells the DNC they were hacked. And the DNC says, oh, who cares? Then the FBI goes again and then again and again. Then Dmitry Alperovich comes out in June earlier than he should have and said, oh, yeah, I went in there and it's all Russians. Then number 7, Comey went to get Felix Sater. Felix Sater, as we know, we've heard all about him. And he took, during 2016, he wrote stupid notes saying that he gave to Michael Cohen a plan to stop the sanctions on Russia. This is in the news. No one wants to talk about it. That's the reason we know who Felix Sater is. Fake Comey nonsense from the beginning, saying that a Russian spy, Felix Sater, who, by the way, as I pointed out, is an asset of the FBI, he's an undercover employee, took members of the Trump team to Moscow in 2016 and said that he was going to allow Ivanka to sit on Trump's chair in his office and get the deals with with Putin, and it was all going to be great. They were going to build a Trump Towers not only in Moscow, but also in Georgia and also in the Crimea. Okay? That was Felix Sater. He is the guy who also set up the meeting with the lawyer.
Hey,
Russian lawyer.
Do you hear that John's calling you? Don't y'all have a 12 o'clock?
Well, John will have to wait. This is the most important thing.
Okay, I'm just letting you know.
I'm not going to get stopped in giving this list out.
All right.
Okay, so then number 8. The State Department allowed the known Russian spies to meet at Trump Tower. I listed all of them. What they call the Russian female lawyer. And I told you who created that. That was all had to be set up ahead of time. Then number 9, Comey went to Franklin Forer. Must have paid a fortune to get the research done. There were scientists at universities who studied these connections between Trump Tower and, by the way, the server was never in Trump Tower. It wasn't even Trump's. It was an advertisement agency in Miami, sending out advertisements to members of executives and banks all over the world saying, come stay at Trump Towers. So the 3 heads of the Alpha Bank were accused of being, in fact, spies, and they are suing also. And just in case you want to know, so I don't make this stuff up, their name is Mikhail Friedman and German Kahn and Peter Avin. They're suing. And the Russian that they accused in the terrible garbage dossier of being the Russian hacker of the DNC is Alexei Gubarev. He's suing. Carter Page is suing. Okay? So almost every... Manafort is going to do a reverse suit once Mueller gets done on him, so he will sue. And so then Michael Cohen is the only one who said he wouldn't sue. And that's because he says it is such garbage, it isn't even worth my suit to sue these people for saying that I am the one, Michael Cohen, Trump's lawyer, who created this connection in Prague through Yevgeny, this hacker, and being paid millions of dollars, and all that money was going through Alpha Bank, and these Russian oligarchs who were suing over these lies went to Trump. Wait, that server in Miami couldn't even take money. It was an advertisement server. This was known. That's why Comey had to come out October 31st and tell Franklin Forer, that's the next thing on the list. I got carried away. He paid Franklin Forer to write those crazy, stupid articles about the Trump Tower server. And then as soon as Franklin Forer did the October surprise on October 30th, and he thought he was a hero because he also released it before that, which is what blew it. And it was proven to be salacious by people who looked at it and went in and proved it through all kinds of digital ways. The second it came out the next day, it had no impact because Comey had to say it isn't true. Well, let's remember that in the dossier that you went before the FISA with, you said it was true, Comey, on the 21st of October. But on the 31st of October, you said that the principal factor that Franklin Foer discovered was not true. Okay? So how many lies can this guy tell? I don't know. So I'm making my list longer, folks. It's more than 18, I'm very sorry to have to say. So I'm going on. June 9th, 2016, the Trump Tower meeting with the Russian lawyer, which was a complete setup. They had to literally practically break the law to let those criminals in this country. Ha! And then they tried to say that it wasn't a setup. And he was listening through Paul Manafort's phone. And that's how that was spied on.
And now we know that these devices can hear every conversation in a room. So if you have a warrant to spy on Paul Manafort, you can just turn his phone, the back door on, and listen to all the conversations.
Plus, we know that others of those people were all swept up in it, so their phones are being listened to. We know that the emails sent from Donald Jr. to those people were all intercepted before and were going to be released to the public. Every one of these leaks, by the way. Every leak from Mueller's investigation is a crime, and there is an inspector general right now investigating leaks in Washington, D.C., but he doesn't seem to notice Mueller's leaks. Not one single leak has been revealed in that inspector general investigation. So, next July 2016, George Papadopoulos they got the counterintelligence agreement. He was already set up before that. So that was a frame, that was a setup, that was FBI entrapment. So that would count Joseph Mifsud and Putin's niece who had a relationship with George Poppy Boy. That is that whole setup. Then, number 12, July, the DNC was hacked by the Russians, released to the public. And then, number 13, Hillary 8 times between then until the debate, texted out that Trump was connected to the Russians. That makes her another Comey spy. She shows up as a Comey spy a few times here. Then we have Comey's exoneration of Hillary, what they call the scandal. I call it espionage. Okay, that is a gigantic thing. Look how many people were involved in that. That was the same group, the Trump opposition group, the Trump, what do they call it? The Trump operation?
They called it the Trump operation.
Trump operation was the same people who exonerated Hillary. And when Comey said that he only, that he wrote this long before all by himself and blah, 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 it's all lies. The Trump operation went in and changed it. We now know that. That's been released. Number 15, the Trump operation is formally founded in July. It turns into what's called the small group. Then it turns into what's called the secret society in the text messages. And then it turns into the Mueller investigation, which I have said so many times, I'm blue in the face. That investigation's still going on, folks. That counterintelligence, it's not an investigation. It's an operation. It was never an investigation. It was to unseat, to remove in the George Soros color revolution after he was elected through this fake dossier. They didn't need it except for that if they got caught. And now they're caught. So that is number 15. Number 16. In October 21st, they went and Comey lied and he got the dossier, which at that time, the lovers were saying that they wanted to change it to the investigation to impeach Trump.
Well, just call it like it is.
Mm-hmm. And so after January 20th, it became literally treasonous, seditious in every way. But even after he was president-elect, and we know they went in, and Mueller, the Comey counterintelligence operation, went in and stole the president-elect's stuff to try to get dirt on him, and they still couldn't find any dirt on him. All right, then after that you have Comey comes out and makes his official statement, and I count those as two different things, with the Trump operation's help, twice, and that's the reason I consider this separate. He says, Hillary is free of all sin, always has been. She is the holiest thing on the earth, and that was with the help of the Trump operation, and that's even after Huma came out, the Huma stuff came out, and what did he say? I read them all. We now know he didn't read any of them, and there was nothing in them, and we know there's so much in them. It's Huma's leak alone is the largest espionage case in American history, let alone Hillary's, let alone Imran Awan. Number 18 is the U.S. Digital Service rigged the election, and that was completely FBI approved, and FBI ran directly out of the White House, which shows that Valerie Jarrett, Obama, Biden, all of them were complicit with Eric Schmidt using Google and using this plan, the template for election. We've gone over this again and again. That was all there. That was all Comey approved.
And I'll put the article link below.
Then number 19. Oh my gosh, that Comey. He's got so many crimes, Betsy, I can't even keep track of all of them. And these are just the ones off the top of my head.
No,
this didn't take 5 minutes to write down.
They're just the surface crimes, because behind every door
Correct.
are thousands of crimes.
That's the reason I don't go over this. Oh my Lord, you know how much evidence there is for this?
Thank goodness they already built the FEMA camps they thought they were going to put us in. There's plenty of room to put them in them.
Going to have to be. Over 50 times Comey leaked directly from what we call the Trump operation, or what I used to call the Trump bunk buddies. He lied that we know of at least a half dozen times, perjured himself, but he leaked over 50 times. He leaked what was said to the president, which is a felony. He lied about all of that to the president, so on and on and on and on. We could go on and on. Number 20, continued the counterintelligence operation to depose a sitting president. I already mentioned that. But what bigger crime, what bigger espionage, what bigger connection to foreign powers, globalist powers? It didn't even matter if it was Russia or China or who it was. It was non-American intervention in U.S. law, using the highest seats of law enforcement in this country and the most powerful intelligence agency, supposedly, actually it's not true, the most powerful intelligence agency in the world. 17 of these separate agencies all were working together in this conspiracy, okay?
And the good news is they didn't win.
Now, I'm going to end on these next two, and only because time is up. The tape's running out, and I have to do a couple more shows today. So, where are we at? Number 21. He leaked all his personal notes, which he and Mueller invented a new rule of evidence saying that if a government official, the FBI or DOJ, writes a note, it's the truth and can be used to convict someone. That's what he was doing with those stupid notes. That's what the notes and the leaks and the notes and the memos and the that's what that was all about. That was releasing the evidence. They believe that's evidence. It's evidence against him. Those rules were changed for Waco. They were changed for the Oklahoma bombing. They were changed for a number of times. Mueller changed those when he was an attorney general, federal attorney general out in California. Anyway, going back. Sorry, you see how I get lost? Comey leaked to the New York Times his personal memos. That is a felony. And the New York Times friend, that's a felony. And New York Times printed it, that's a felony. And why? Because he said he was going to it would get a special investigation, that he knew his friend Rod Rosenstein would choose Mueller. He said he knew it would be Mueller. Okay? So he had to get Mueller to come and save him because he committed so many crimes that just like he was there to cover the crimes of Mueller before with Uranium One, he got to say, look, I covered your crimes. I've been the head of this FBI.
Well, wait a minute. So they've just hoodwinked us.
Yes.
They're calling it a special counsel.
Yes.
That's what they're calling it, and they got all of us to believe what it is. But this is just an extension of the Trump operation.
Correct. And it's a cover-up for the Trump,
right,
for the continuing FBI counterintelligence.
So what does Mueller do now?
Operation.
He's in a corner.
Oh,
all of us, we all know these crimes. How does he wiggle out of this thing?
Oh, easy. Number 22, and then I'm done.
Okay.
I'll shut up
all
after that. Number 22, Comey was given immunity by Robert Mueller. Complete effing immunity.
When?
Before he came and witnessed before the Congress. He said that he met with Mueller. That would be collusion. He should have recused himself. They're the best of buddies. They've worked together at HSBC and everywhere else. They couldn't be closer. They might as well be just like his twin Peter. No, Mueller had to have given him immunity for Mueller to speak with him before he came and testified before Congress. Everyone says that. Every lawyer will tell you that. Had to be.
Well, there sure are a lot of criminals on your list that don't have immunity.
We got to go get them, Betsy.
Let's go get them, Thomas.